This program is brought to you by Emory University.
Good evening. Good evening. Good evening, everyone, and welcome. We're about to get started, and let me just say for some of you who are standing at the back, there are some seats in the front, and please feel free to come forward and take those seats. This evening's discussion will carry on for a while, and we want you to be comfortable in order to participate in it. My name is Sita Ranchod-Nilsen, and I direct Emory's Institute for Developing Nations. The Institute is a key link between academic programs at Emory and the Carter Center's Health and Peace programs. We work with faculty as well as program staff at the Carter Center in three areas. One, we are interested in creating opportunities for students to get programmatic experience with the Carter Center, and also to do research that connects in some way with the Carter Center's work. We want to foster research on topics of mutual interest, and we also spend a lot of time doing programming like this. Programming that brings very complex and difficult kind of challenges in the world to Emory, and programming that gives us a bit of insight into the Carter Center's work. Tonight's event is part of an ongoing series called Prospects for Peace in Sudan and South Sudan. The series was inaugurated this past February with a panel of distinguished guests who had participated at very high levels in the peacemaking process in Sudan and South Sudan. And tonight continues with another group of very distinguished guests. As most of you know, the Carter Center has a long history of working in the region. In 1995, President Carter was involved in negotiating the historic guinea worm ceasefire that stopped hostilities so that the guinea worm eradication program could go in to address that health problem. Today, South Sudan remains, I would say, ground zero in the center's efforts to eradicate guinea worm disease, as it is the kind of last place where many cases, or a diminishing number of cases, but a concentration of cases still exists. The democracy program observed the historic referendum that took place in 2011, and the conflict resolution program continues to focus on the challenges of building peace in Sudan, in South Sudan, and in the region that encompasses them both. Our distinguished guests this evening have been part of that process and continue to be part of peace-building efforts. In a moment, I will ask my wonderful colleague, Itonde Kakoma, Assistant Director of the Conflict Resolution Program, to offer more detailed introductions about our guests. I will just say a word before we begin, and that comes out of participation yesterday in a roundtable discussion that was organized by my colleagues in law, the Center for Ethics, Religion, and of course the Carter Center's Conflict Resolution Program. That was a fascinating discussion, again with our guests who have been on the very inside of peacemaking processes. And it was important for all the reasons that the conflict in Sudan and South Sudan and the region is important. And many of you know all those reasons. But the discussion really ranged to a number of broad issues too, such as the role of religion in conflict, and how religion can be misinterpreted as we try to understand its role in conflict, the meaning of self-determination, the role of U.S. foreign policy, and perhaps especially most interesting to me, at the end of the discussion, the question was raised, are Africans prepared to assimilate to Western concepts and processes, or does the West need to pay more attention to African systems for resolving conflict? So these were a number of big issues. I look forward to our discussion this evening, and at this time, I would like to introduce my colleague from the Carter Center's Conflict Resolution Program, Itonde Kakoma, to introduce our distinguished guests. Thank you.
Good evening. Good evening. I think I'm projecting, but I don't know if the microphone is. It is. Thank you. Sita, thank you for the introduction and for the hospitality at the university today and yesterday. I'd like to move into discussion more so than provide further introduction, but I think it would be suitable to at least recognize other colleagues from the Carter Center who are here with us and whose legacy, in fact, our current work builds upon. The direct, if I can say, director, Herrera Balian in Conflict Resolution Program is with us. Tom Crick, Associate Director, also in Conflict Resolution, who has supported efforts in Sudan for a number of years. And next to him are our three senior colleagues, current and former Vice President for Peace Programs, Ambassador Gordon Strebe, Vince Farley, former diplomat in residence, who was very much involved in the guinea worm ceasefire that Sita had referenced, and Dr. Steve Hochman, who's the Director of Research at the Carter Center. I'm sure there are a number of other colleagues present with us. Forgive me for not introducing you. This evening we gather to discuss the prospects for peace between the two Sudans. And we are honored at the Carter Center and here at Emory to receive our guests, all of whom are familiar to one another, but to my left, I should say, Dr. Luol Deng, former Minister of Petroleum in the Government of National Unity, currently heads one of Juba's first think tanks. We need to think of a better description of the Ebony Center for Strategic Studies, because indeed it's more than simply thinking. It is also convening people to think constructively and also act, if that's a fair description. To his left is General Lazarus Simbeo of Kenya, who served as Kenya's special envoy to IGAD and chaired, was the chief mediator of Sudan's comprehensive peace agreement between the government of Sudan and the Sudan People's Liberation Army / movement, signed in 2005. Ambassador Rabi al-Hassan of Khartoum, government of Sudan's former ambassador to Italy, currently directing a preeminent institution in Sudan, the Future Studies Center in Khartoum. You are most welcome.
Thank you. Thank
you. I should note that Sita mentioned that this discussion stems from earlier discussions at which one of our friends and colleagues who is with us this evening, Ambassador Alan Goulty, the former UK Special Envoy to Sudan and Darfur, and in fact served as Ambassador to Sudan for an extended period as well. Alan, you're most welcome. Again. So we turn to discussion. And many of us here are familiar, or at least been following, but rarely, if ever, are able to encounter the likes of General Simbeo, Ambassador Hassan, and Dr. Deng, as they were all involved in assisting in the brokering and, in fact, serving as a midwife as one of the other description was, to peace. I'd like to, although he says one of his principles is not to talk, but rather to listen as a mediator, if he'll permit me. And I'd like to turn to General Simbeo. We signed the comprehensive peace agreement between Sudan, the government of Sudan, and the Sudan People's Liberation Army movement. Could you begin by telling us why a comprehensive peace agreement was necessary? What events led to the need for a comprehensive peace agreement? General Simbeo.
Thank you very much. Firstly, I don't know how many of us know where the problem of Sudan started from. We've been informed that the first started in 642 AD.
Not 1642, but
642 AD.
52, 652.
Oh, 652, okay. There's an improvement. What, 10 years? Started, but I got into the current process from 1989, when the National Congress Party took over power from the elected Prime Minister Sadiq al-Mahdi, and they then decided that it was time to stop the war that had been going on since 1983. 3 other attempts had been made. In 1991, in Frankfurt, Germany, they had tried to meet with the parties to agree to stop the war, but they didn't get far. In 1992, 2 meetings were held in Abuja, in Nigeria, again without any success. Now, the events that took place in the United States of America on 9/11 prompted certain things to happen. There is a meeting that was held in January 2002. I think I should go back a little. In 1997, the government of Khartoum agreed to sign on to the Declaration of Principles, which had been developed in 1994 in Nairobi. These Declaration of Principles were just a diagnosis of the problem. But to the people who had been suffering for quite a while, they thought the solution had been found for their problem, and so they thought, this Declaration of Principles they should stick to. In 2002, after the 9/11 incident in 2001, the IGAD, IGAD is a regional body that governs the Horn of Africa, met in Khartoum and agreed that the chairman of the North and South peace negotiations should invite anybody who had something to offer. I had just been reappointed 2 months that time. And so I took advantage of that phrase, invite anybody who had something to offer. My immediate place was the United States of America, Washington. They must have something to offer. Secondly, the former masters of Sudan, the British. So I went to Washington and then I went to London. These 2 places were very, very positive. They were willing to assist and they were willing to join the process. We then started with a process. First of all, at that time, President Carter came to Nairobi in 2002, visited Nairobi. And in our discussion about the negotiations in Sudan, he asked me a question and says, General Sumbeiwa, how are you negotiating? And I said, following the DOPs, of course. He says, if I were you, I would want to have a single negotiating text. My training originally was not in mediation. It was, of course, in prosecuting war as a general.
As head of Kenya's military.
I was the head of the Kenyan military at the time. But I got out of President Carter's meeting asking myself single negotiating text. And I went, and there wasn't much actually in the internet at the time about these things. But when I convened the meeting, the first meeting was with the aim of developing a single negotiating text. I had been fired by President Carter. And so that was the aim. You know, we developed a single negotiating text in Machakos, called the Machakos agreement. The issue was everybody at that time were very skeptical whether we were going to make it because everybody had attempted before and failed. But I didn't have that luxury of failing. I wanted, because they'd been suffering in Sudan. They've been, of course, misrepresentation of facts in Sudan about the whole of South Sudan being Christian and the whole of North Sudan being Islam. In fact, it became like it was a religious war. My understanding was, no, it wasn't a religious war. In fact, some people thought the American Special Envoy, Senator Danford, thought it was the oil. I told him, no, it's not the oil. So there was something much deeper. And of course, we then went along to try and discover, which we did. In developing the single negotiating text, we discovered what was the problem. The problem was not something very serious. It was the issue of recognition, and it was the issue of being able to listen to one another. It might sound simple. It is not as simple as that. If somebody doesn't listen to you, then you shoot them, and they will listen to you. That's the reason. I mean, that's how the war started. You know, I mean, the Southerners wanted to be listened to, but nobody was listening to them. So they started shooting, and eventually, of course, then I think maybe I should stop there so other people should talk. Because I can talk on and on this issue of the Sudan. Step by step, if we want the details of what happened.
From 652 onwards.
Yeah.
There you go.
And we'll be here for the next, how many years? Quite a number of years. So I think I should, you know.
We'll come back to the question of comprehensive, but you've given us a
no,
context.
The reason it's not comprehensive. Peace agreement, the current peace agreement was not comprehensive enough. For me, it wasn't comprehensive. But it was comprehensive in the sense that we approached the issue holistically. We did not approach it singly. We approached the issue in terms of area, that is the space that's captured, that's the space that this issue will apply to. It was the resources in those areas, it was the security in those areas, and the governance in those areas. So in that context, it is comprehensive. But it wasn't comprehensive enough because before even we signed the agreement in 2003, there was another conflict in Darfur. And the spotlight from south moved to Darfur. And we were left high and dry, hanging. So it is, you might say, comprehensive in terms of addressing the issues, but it is not in time of space, in the area. We did not, it wasn't comprehensive enough in the area covered.
Dr. Deng, you recently finished a manuscript on the late Dr. John Garang, on his vision and principles, and from what I recall, you also served as not only a longtime friend, but also as the principal economic advisor to him. Help us understand, in terms of name, the Sudan People's Liberation Army/movement. What was at the core of liberation, or what was the goal of? What did you mean by liberation in relationship to the vision that you've recently articulated?
And excuse me, let me also stand because I would like to, when I'm talking to people,
please.
at least they can see me. And I can also see their faces. But sitting down, I think it's difficult, so that, so if I may. Well, the way the SPLA was initiated came as a result of Dr. John's vision of New Sudan, where he articulated in such a way that he started with what is common among the Sudanese, not what divides the Sudanese, but what unites the Sudanese. And he went back to history to see where we came from. He went up to Kush Kingdom. People call it Nubian and all the other things, but it's Kush Kingdom. And found, if you take it from there, so you have the historical factor which unite. Then you have the territory, the Sudan, which is so as a great country, the largest country by then in Africa. He also saw diversity, contemporary, we call it contemporary diversity. He saw as a source of strength, not a source of weakness. So liberation, it was more of a liberation of mind, attitude, what the general was saying, recognition. Recognition from that this country is great, the space is able to accommodate all of us. But nobody had the right to deny our being. If any, at least we felt that we are Cushite. And the people who happen to be at the center of hegemony, trying to marginalize the rest of us, if any, they are a mixture of us. And this is why it goes back to 652, the first agreement between the Nuba and the Arab, which was violated. So we started to see where problem started to be. When you have agreement, it is not honored. And also look and to say, we are not here to deny the Sudanese who claim to be Arabs and Muslims. But let us see where we agree, the Sudanism he was calling. What is it, why are we being called Sudan? What is common? And he said, commonality of the Sudanese. And when you don't have a space to discuss an issue, then you are forced to react. So, of course, what we call the cultural and political elite who were at the center of power in Khartoum used their being Arabs and Islam as a tool to feel that they are the center of power and look more towards Egypt and the Arab world, and look associated the darkness of the skin to slavery, that you are a slave. But Dr. John saw it the other way around, that and really got informed by writing of even the Northern Sudanese, people like Mansour Khalid and others, and where they emphasize that this is a meeting point between the Arabs and the African world, and a mix of cultures. And for a Southerner to walk told that you are not actually a slave. You are the master of this place. And, and somehow you happen to allow yourself mentally to look as an inferior and push away. So that was the meaning of the liberation. That, and then he kept the name Sudan. And people look back and, I think he was 27 years old, because he was in the first war in Nyanya, where he left secondary school when he was in second year, Rumbek. He joined, but given the wisdom of those leading the first war, Joseph Oduho, William Deng, Father Satrino, they felt that people like John Garang, they were too young. And they say, this liberation is not going to finish today. Go back to school. So they pushed them. Dr. John was taken to Tanzania. So he finished his secondary school in Tanzania, got a scholarship to the US. He went to Grinnell College in Iowa. And in '69, he was accepted in Berkeley, University of California, Berkeley. And he went to Tanzania, but went and opted now to join the Anyanya War at the time. And when negotiation started, he wrote what I call in the book, like an internal memo, guiding the negotiation, and which I think the general may come later on. And he was putting that even when we were fighting, they say, let us give options. So the preferred option is a united new Sudan where it's federated, so that where people agreed on the federation, but allow each side to keep an army. But he said this concept of federation must be put in the constitution. If the center or inner region later on deny, that region has the right to succeed. But it must also have an army. It's that for Southerners, you will not get your right if you don't have an army. And this is where the liberation came. So at the time when they could not reach, he moved back to get the army. And in the Machakos, if I may come back to, but maybe use the title, and he started to use the Venn diagrams. He started now to use, this is what I call in the book, the power of creative reasoning. He started now to reason, to say, look, if, then, and put circles. So if, and this was the idea, if you do not want to accept us to live this way, then allow the South to succeed. And this was put. And then he said, look, let us experiment during the interim period. So we will not impose secularism on the North, and the North will not impose Islam on us. So the Machakos Protocol, it was based on a one country, two systems. And to give a period whereby to experiment where you say give the unity a chance. But then for the North to say, look, which one do you have? You have to trade off between Sharia or unity of the country. But it was clearly put, if the North insisted on the Sharia, then the country will be split into two. So I consider that as a power of creative reasoning. As you heard yesterday, the general also is saying he will be writing, based also on Dr. John saying the power of creative ambiguity. Because if you look in the comprehensive peace agreement, there are about 6 protocols. So 2 of the protocols, one could classify them as creative ambiguity. It was talking of popular consultation. So if using the American language, what in the world, what the hell is it called popular consultation? But through creative, because you want to stop the war, and you also, these colleagues of ours, they took part of us, with the South. And he used to tell Dr. John, part of his reasoning, he said, look, for people who were, either they got tired of war, or they felt maybe if you call for separation, then you get it. And he was telling, you can't, my friends, you have to come with me first to Khartoum in order to get yourselves. And he used to tell openly, for Southerners who were fighting with him, please fight with me, and if you feel that I'm thinking too much, by the time we reach the border, you stop there. But let us liberate physically there. And if I move by myself and there's nobody following me, logically, I'll be with you. So most of the Southern separatists also accepted it, that it is logical. Let us follow his approach. Those of Dr. Riek Machar and Lamakol got tired, and they thought by calling for self-determination and separation, independent South Sudan, they were forced later on by realities that they signed agreement, Khartoum did not honor. So they came back, and Dr. John welcomed them back to the movement, against some of the people who say, no, these are traitors, we should not accept them back. And he said, there's nothing called traitor. These are brothers. They have tried, they've tested it, and they have found the reality. So the best is to accept them back too. Now, prospect for peace, to conclude, is Dr. John believed the question of viable Sudanese state, if it is one. There are now 2. So we should really focus on 2 viable Sudanese states at peace with each other and within themselves. That's where, if you talk of prospects for peace, and this is also where the creative reasoning of Dr. John will come in, where you see the border. We have, in Africa, the longest border between Sudan and South Sudan. According to CIA book, it's about 2,080 kilometers. Recently, I saw some writing saying 1,800 kilometers. Still is the longest. And this is where oil produced today, yes, oil is not the cause of, but oil is a complicating factor. And it's actually, if Emory did not impose Sharia, did not divide the South into, actually things would have been different. But because of the oil, allowed Emory to behave that way. So you can say oil contributed in accelerating the split of the country. But you see the oil being produced in those states. We say there are 6 states on the north, from the north, 5 states on the south. Those 11 states, they constitute a population of the 2 Sudans, 42%, 45% of agricultural land. 100% of oil produced today is produced along those. So, and then historical, Dr. John used to call it Tamazic zone. Tamazic is an Arabic. It's a melting point. It's like brick. You know, you mix mud with soil, with whatever, it becomes brick. So he said it's a melting point where culturally, this is the 2 cultures melt, and you should allow the movement of people and goods and services in between. So he felt that the Tamazic is key. Again, is part of what I call is creative reasoning, not creative ambiguity. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Wong. Ambassador Rabi. you must have heard Dr. Deng referred to the geographic scale of the Sudan as a whole, and not just its borders, but prior to July 9, 2011, as you know better than I, Sudan was the largest country on the continent, bordering some 9 countries, from the Red Sea down to the Democratic Republic of the Congo, to Uganda, to Kenya, Eritrea, Central African Republic, Libya, Egypt, Ethiopia, and all of that complex difference between those countries reflected perhaps within the Sudan. What would you say, Ambassador Rabi, was different about the SPLA? Meaning, at the time when talks were underway, there were various rebellions within Sudan. What was different about the SPLA that, in a sense, led toward the government of Sudan to negotiate with them directly and ultimately reach a comprehensive agreement as mediated by General Simbeo? What was at stake for the government of Sudan? Ambassador Rabi.
Thank you, Itande, and thanks for the Carter Center for what they have been doing in Sudan. And I'm really impressed by the fact that so many people here whom I met went to Sudan as part of the Carter program, democracy program, and the health programs. And it helps a great deal when people go to Sudan rather than knowing about Sudan from the media, because the media tends to misrepresent the facts and give a false picture and idea about what goes on in Sudan. As is being mentioned by Brother Lual and before him, General Semboya, the reason that we reached the comprehensive peace agreement was that in the 90s, a lot of the issues became clearer. And this is because of the effort of John Garang and others. In the past, the problem of the South has a history. It is not old enough, we can say. It started as a confrontation between the North and the South in 1955, just before independence. But before that, both the South and the North were a British colony. And the share of the South was that it found complete neglect from the colonizer at the time. The country was left to a large extent undeveloped, no infrastructure, no economic projects, no education, no health, nothing. And this is why we had this problem, what we call the problem of South Sudan. And when the country became independent, our brothers in South Sudan realized that they came to see where they are. And they wanted to see how they can get out of this. And they reached the point where they felt that they have to take their own fate in their hands. And that's why they started calling for a system in Sudan where they will have an independent entity within the Sudan. And what they have said at the time was quite logical. But the problem was that the events took a different shape. The problem became a security problem for the government, the successive governments that governed the Sudan. They looked at it as a security problem. And they always thought that the reaction should be a military reaction, where they can suppress the rebellion and then do whatever they want to do in the way they wanted to do it from those who are ready to cooperate with them. But this soon created a very bad situation, which led to war. And war is ugly, it is dirty, and it took very bad shape till the world came to know about the South from this war that took place in the South. Fortunately, developments in the North, things started to change. There was a recognition that there is a problem in the South. And then there started some type of negotiations between the North and the South. Okay, this is the situation in the South. What are we going to do about it? And this resulted in so many agreements, but still the problem was not completely solved. Whatever the South got was not all that they wanted to get. Till we came to the 90s, and a new government came to Sudan, and they wanted to address the problem as it is and look for what the South wants and try to reach an agreement on that. And at that time, the issues were a lot of issues, like Luwal has just mentioned. The issue of identity, the issue of Islam, the issue of Arab, what is the South, where does it belong? And of course, petrol came in and aggravated the problem, as he just mentioned. And the whole thing developed and became ripe for a solution. And the solution that appeared at that time was that it is true that the South and the North, there is a difference, but there are a lot of commonalities between the North and the South. And the solution to this is not to have two countries, but one country. And here came the idea of one country, two systems. And this is the idea which CPA emerged from this idea, that how can you make a country with two systems of government, each one addressing the particular part of the country, and but still keep it as one country. And that was what the essence of the CPA was at the time. And this is what Dr. John Garang tried to explain, to put before the Sudanese people, that now the war is ended. We know why the war took place. Now we don't want it. We have the ability and the power to stop the war and create a new Sudan. And this new Sudan meets the expectations of both the people in the North and the people in the South. But afterwards, things changed. John Garang passed away. The idea of one Sudan didn't really come down to everyone and was not assimilated by many people, to the extent that the SPLA was really found itself, or was recognized, or people noticed from their actions since the signing of the agreement and throughout the transitional period, which was 6 years, and it was put intentionally in the agreement to give both the South and the North the chance to live together separately, but at the same time, they can join hands to build one country, and also join hands to solve the problems of both sides of the country. But SPLA, to a large extent, the main trend there was for separation. They thought it's not going to work. One country, two systems is not going to work. So they headed towards separation. And that's what happened. At the referendum, the Sudan separated into two countries. And this is okay. The CPA itself provided for this, that in case there is people in the South are convinced that they cannot go ahead with, then they can separate. It is self-determination. Accept it as a right. And if it's exercised, fine. But it doesn't mean that is the end of the story. Like I said, and the world has said, history says that the Sudan is one country, despite the differences and so on. I remember a very important lecture delivered by a very prominent brother from South Sudan, Dr. Francis Deng, in which he tried to address the question of coexistence between the North and the South. And he mentioned so many things that are similar or common, which brings the two people together. A degree of understanding, look to things, habits, a lot of things. And then on the other side, he looked at the actual life in Sudan and the problems that it brought and the difficulties of the North dealing with the South and so on and so forth. The things that brought to the mind of the Southerners the idea that it is good that they are something separate. It's good for them to be separated. And then he said, what is the solution for this problem? And he had a very imaginative look. He said, I would think that the solution should be that we have a separation. Let us separate and unite again. Why did he say this? He said that there is a backlog of psychological and lot of impressions and perceptions and so many things, which need to be cleared from the way. Each section living by itself, looking at itself, and see what they look like. And then, after that, they can look into solutions for the problem and see the possibility of living together as one country, because they can't separate. They can't separate. And actually, the feeling now, whether in the South or in the North, is that this idea of separation and two states and so on is something political. Events force itself to bring people to this end. And we are facing a situation where it is important for the viability of both states in the North and the South to look at themselves and look at the constraints, the geographical, economic, social, cultural, and all of things together, and to try to work out a relationship between the two countries. Let them say two countries. Now we're instead of one country, two systems, we have two countries, two systems. But the systems can work together. And a working relationship is needed. This is a new thinking now in the SPLA and in the North also. Some people think that there is no genuine belief in this, and whoever talks about it is just forced by the circumstances, the conditions, because they can't operate otherwise. They can't, it is difficult to, and other people think that this is a real belief in what people wanted to do. And between the two perceptions now, there is a secret dialogue going on, whether to come out clearly in support of this and work for a united, for not a united, but for a special relationship between the two countries, develop economic and political future, in such a way that we have this. Of course, this is not new. In many places in the world, you have independent countries, but you have relationship between them. You have independent countries who came so close that they even form forms of unities, unions, and what have you. So there is a lot of things that we can think about, but I think this is where we stand right now. Thank
General
you.
Simbeo, while brokering peace between the government of Sudan and the SPLA, the likelihood of an independent Republic of South Sudan in 2012, as it is now, could you have foretold that story? Or was it unlikely at the time?
No, it wasn't possible. It wasn't, actually I went down, and I said I don't want to go down in history as the person who negotiated the split of Sudan, or who mediated the split of Sudan. One is because the late Dr. John Garang was very, very strong in the sense that he believed, and he totally believed, the new Sudan to him was not about two Sudans. It was about the Sudan, a new dispensation within the Sudan, the whole of Sudan. And as I agree with Dr. Hassan, Ambassador Hassan Rabi, that was the perception of Dr. John. And I think also Dr. Luala has alluded to this. So it was very, very remote. It wasn't really the thing. It wasn't part of, when we signed the agreement, the jubilation that took place was about the war having been stopped. It wasn't about that we are going to split. Yeah.
Which is probably a surprise to many, because the world now looks at the independence of South Sudan as the assumed goal of the SPLA and the assumed goal of the peace agreement.
No, it wasn't assumed a goal for.
I didn't mean to use this word.
Well, don't worry about it. Not everybody knows this. the assumption of the world, they are entitled to have their own assumptions, but the crafters of the agreement and the negotiators did not envisage this position, because if you saw the drawings that Dr. John Garang he said, okay, fine, we'll have two circles overlapping each other, and this is if we do not agree to remain as one, then we will revert to these circles, the circle of the north and the south, with an overlap in between, where it indicated that there was going to be something like a federation. But Dr. John Garang, not everybody is like Dr. John Garang. He had a very, very strong character of his own, that even the things that we thought we would not be able to have, like retaining an army, was that he says, put it in. You are not the one who is going to negotiate. I am going to negotiate. Put it in for me. And he negotiated it. He believed, he totally believed. And he actually believed that, that he had a chance of leading the whole of Sudan eventually. That is when that liberation would come. The liberation of anybody could become the president of Sudan. So it wasn't a part of the envisaged end result.
Dr. Deng, 2005 Comprehensive Peace Agreement, the 2011 referendum on the right to self-determination of South Sudan. Overwhelming percentage of voters within the South voted in favor of secession, leading to the independence of the South July 9th. And yet, we see two countries, and I imagine most people who are here would not be so familiar with the history as being presented now or the vision as being articulated so clearly, but more so with the reality of two countries at conflict between and arguably within. Why are we there? Having gone through all of those processes in peace, and yet we still hear about conflict.
It's not light.
I think someone leaned against the wall. It was a subtle way of saying, may I have your seat?
Well, some people are still in shock, especially in the north. And some in the south, they are still not realizing that a neighbor as a country is different from a neighbor as a house. And where you are sitting now, if somebody is bothering you, you can leave, go and sit somewhere else. But
Or turn off the lights.
yeah, turn off the light. But these are two countries, God has given them this space. They have to share it. And until we realize that in order for us to share this, we will not live in peace. The second is the fact that there's a reality. There are two states. And by the way, some people, when we talk of that we are misinterpreting Dr. John Garang. But Dr. John Garang put conditions. He never forgot. He felt, yes, we are dealing with our cousins who, throughout history, they got used to dishonoring agreement. So conditions were put. And if you dishonor this one this time around, the price is very high, split. And it was very clear. John did not hide it. Also, he put the thing he wanted to do in 180 days. Those he wanted to do because he didn't want the 100 days, because we don't have institutions. So he put 180 days. And we put three columns, if I don't know what it was, metrics. So the first column is what he will do as the first vice president of the Sudan. Second column, what he will do as the president of the government of Southern Sudan. And John always liked the Bible, refer to the Bible. Either 10 Commandments or 12 disciples. I work with him on so he told me, no, you know my rules. Either 10 things or 12. So I settled for 10 things, which he will do in 180 days. And those are the things, as John alluded to, are things for somebody who has the wider, the macro view of the country. And he clearly saw the possibility, because he said, part of our problem has been inferiority complex. And so that thing has to get out of our system, that we can do it. We can manage this country. And some of us, generally especially remember when in June 2004, when everything was sealed, and then people were now going to come back for the implementation modalities. So he took a month in order to explain. Before he signed it, he has to explain it to the people of the South. And to average Southern Sudanese, he managed to convince them. He said two things, especially with the Dinkas and the Nuers and the barrier group who are cattle owners. And he said, do you go to court to go and say about your cow, to say this cow is mine? And the people say, no, you don't. So you go to court and claim somebody's cow and say, this is mine. So he was telling them that our cow is already behind us, the South is behind us. I want that cow in Khartoum, I want Khartoum. And people stood with him. That, yeah, if you can get it, why not? Yeah, so this is how he sold the unity thing. Of course, some people in the North say it is expansionist. And he will say, okay, what is wrong with expansionism? Yeah. After all, it's our country. So coming back to this, we have to see the realities. And I mentioned in the book, by the way, to warn, and we will be part of our discussion with my colleague and brother, Rabi, that actually the Khartoum ran the risk of Sudan disintegrating into smaller states. The Darfur up to 1916 was an independent state. Funj was the center one time of the whole Sudan. You have the Nuba, retreated. The Nuba, by the way, they are Kushite. We are Kushite with them. They retreated and moved this way. Now, and I hope the journalists don't misquote me if I say, but if down the road, especially when the oil deal, the new one, where the South feels cheated, people will be working around the clock, find alternative routes of exporting the oil. At the time I was, and Bashir knew it, but I convinced the President Bashir when I was the minister. I was the only minister for, you can say, 11 months, petroleum. But I was a state minister of finance for 5 years. So I told the President Bashir, for me, around August, 2 months after I was a minister, to begin to look for alternative. I said, we want to take the oil pipelines to Djibouti, second to Lamu, the other through West Africa, Cameroon. So he asked me why you want to do that. I said, two possibilities. We may have more oil actually in Block 6, which is in Kordofan, and the two pipelines, and then more oil in the 3 and 7, which is northern Upper Nile. If we reach a point where we have 2 million barrels a day, the two pipelines will not be able to, because maximum 500. And the marine terminals. The second is possibility of conflict between Israel and Iran. So the Red Sea can be closed. We have to look for alternative. And he said, okay, go ahead and do the studies. So we did some studies, and we found that it is quicker, cheaper, even shorter from Upper Nile to Djibouti than to Port Sudan, by the way. That alternative is there. And Southerners can push it and can get between 32 to 48 months. You can build alternative. If the spirit, if people still, if there is, how do you call it? If still anger is high, and people are angry, and Juba can easily, with more resources, support the Blue Nile and the Nuba. And traditional, by the way, the soldiers of the Sudan army were always from the Nuba and Darfur. So if we support the Nuba, it will be very easy to overrun Khartoum. It will be very easy to overrun Khartoum. So, of course, you can talk of regional new changes in Egypt, in Libya, which are more pro-Khartoum, so it will be more complicated. And that's where the rationality comes in, that for goodness sake, don't do it that way, because it would be dangerous. So what rationality will do is to guide us back and begin, and this is where the Carter and what we are doing tonight is useful, that to let the Sudanese realize that, one, you don't choose a neighbor. Second, rationality demand that you have to coexist peacefully and stop supplying each other's adversaries. So when rationality comes in, a clear one, not ambiguous, as the general said, and also realize, by the way, if, and we are trying to do with the center, the Ebony Center for Strategic Studies, try to look at what archaeologists now are bringing up. It's archaeology, historian, going back to most of our archaeologists in the north. This is what we have left. And it's something which we should have shared also. This is part of our legacy. But anyway, if they are now indicating that the Kush at the time, which is Sudan, the kingdom of Kush, it was the center of culture and military might in Africa. So if the two Sudans can realize that actually there will be the breadbasket of the African and the Arab world and even the rest of the world, because next crisis is going to be fuel and food. So they can realize that they can restore the might, the military, the cultural might, will this time will be economic might for the region. Then they will now begin to really think that it is better to stop all this, as they did during the Naibacha process, to stop all these things, or even to allow for Bashir to visit Juba on the 1st of January 2011. He's a courageous man. People talk of courage. His profiles in courage, that is one of the cases. And you know that this country is going to break, let it go break peacefully. He allowed that to happen. That's courage. So we need that moment where we also will reciprocate in the South, which in a way, the agreement, the recent agreement on oil, which people are not talking about, but we have given over $8 billion to Khartoum. That's the South. 8 billion. 5 billion is forgiven because it's already arrears. And over 42 months, giving Khartoum $3.02 billion in aid, even though it's not being called, it's called the Transitional Financial Arrangement, but aid. What we need to do is the ordinary Northern Sudanese to realize that actually the South is giving, so that we, the political elites, we are trying to gloss it over and not to be realistic and not in good faith. But this has to be shown that actually the South is giving and is supporting at least for 42 months, 42 months, supporting Khartoum, even though we are on our knees in terms of development, as he articulated. We have less than 200 kilometers of paved road. And this is an area of 644,000 kilometers. And a very weak bridge, I don't know, Italian who built it on Juba Road, a weak bridge. how many bridges around Khartoum? So when Ambassador Rabi said, yes, in terms of development and all this, and yet we're willing to, and we have been giving Khartoum. So I hope I answered your question.
No, you did. Ambassador Rabi, you mentioned the role of the media, and I think our colleagues, not to point you out, but our colleagues from CNN might be surprised to hear the reference to President Bashir as a courageous man who enabled the peaceful separation. We have roughly 15 to 20 minutes left, and I would open the floor for questions, asking you to be brief and singular in your question, if you would. I will take 3 at a time. Kristen and Alexander, I believe, are going to help with questions. We have a gentleman here, Ashagri, a gentleman here, and Sibi. We'll come back. Okay. We have 3 in the corner right there, Alexander. Why don't you go ahead? Brief and singular, please. Thank you.
Okay. I might have joined the discussion late, so this issue might have been discussed. My issue is on the CPA. I mean, during the process, and I'm addressing it to the chief negotiator. So, was there any attempt to include judicial accountability? Because I see the CPA as, a good aspect of achieving a peace, but I'm missing that part, and I think they would continue. Thank you.
Judicial accountability.
Yeah.
Please, if you would.
My question is, I read your manuscript, and
You're referring to Dr. Deng, correct?
yes.
Yeah.
And what I found really interesting was basically Dr. Garang was such a politically moral person. And my question is with regards to getting to the point where you reach a Tamajid zone, and with Sudan that has had such a history of being politically immoral with regards to keeping agreements since 1974. And my question is...
I think it's at 652.
652, sorry.
652.
And yeah, and so I'm wondering, how do you build trust? And when you reach the point of a Tamajid zone, is it forgiveness, or is it just moving on and knowing it's for the greater good of the North and the South?
There are a few questions underneath, but I'm afraid with that question, that's another book he's about to write on the Tamajid zone, so I'm fearful for the response. Please, if you would. Next question.
Yeah, we had here at Emory a number of years ago a soccer game between the Lost Boys of Sudan and an international team, and it was on CNN, and people brought soccer equipment and then sent it to Sudan for the Lost Boys for the Sudanese to play with the peacekeeping forces. And the president of Rwanda actually at that time helped expedite arranging that. So many of the people here we know from those activities. I did want to ask this question about the relationship with China, particularly, and northern Sudan. I know that played a major role in the past, and the real question is, what role does that play today?
Good question. Let's take a few more. There's a gentleman just behind and a gentleman in front. Yeah. Oh, sorry, I won't be biased to my left. Please, just brief and singular, if you would.
Thank you very much for giving me this chance. My name is Ngor Kurmayol. I'm a former lost boy. I'm so happy to see you here in this panel. My question is go to two people. You mentioned that the cause of war was not the oil. You mentioned that the cause of war was not the religion. Okay, if these two are not the cause of war, what made war started in Darfur? What made war started again in southern Kordofan? What made war started in Blue Nile? Can you tell the world if it's not the oil, if it's not the religion? What is it?
Over here, please.
That's you.
We'll come back to the question. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. My name is Jacob Mart. I'm glad to be here. And my question is going to Ambassador Rabi Hassan Ahmed. The question is, the Sudan government wants the South Sudan to disarm the SPLM North rebel in order to allow South Sudan to resume oil production. Is Sudan not capable of disarming its own rebel? In addition, is it logical for South Sudan to disarm Sudan's rebel in its own territory? Because I think this is very important in regard to the issue of peace, and it is the topic of discussion tonight. Thank you.
One final question all the way in the back there. Not final, but for this round, and we'll come back, depending on how the response is.
Okay. My name is Dengater, and my question will go to Dr. Lual and maybe the chief negotiator, General Lazarus. The peace agreement was called CPA, and after the death of John Garang, 3 provisions have been left out. That is the border, the issue of the status of a BA, and the public consultation in 2 areas, which is Southern Kordofan and Blue Nile. And now, if General Lazarus is still considering his role, why is it that people are focusing on negotiating about oil and still there is no border between the 2 countries? The first thing is to know where your border is and then talk about food after you know your area. Thank you.
So just to review, which one? Judicial accountability.
Yeah.
The Tamazight zone, how does it come about? China relations with the North in particular. If the cause of war was neither oil nor religion, then why do we see war in the Blue Nile, South Kordofan, and Darfur? Disarmament of the SPLM North. Is the government of Sudan able to do this? Secondarily, is it logical for the government of South Sudan to be asked to disarm a rebel movement within another territory? And then finally, with regards to 3 provisions of the peace agreement still outstanding, as it were, with regards to borders, ABIE, and popular consultations within the 2 areas. And yet the focus still is on oil when food and security and borders are at risk. General Sembeo, on judicial accountability within the CPA.
I request to start this time, please.
Yes.
First of all, thank you very much. The issue of CBA, whether there was any attempts made for judicial accountability. I believe what you're talking about is establishing a DGRC. Were there any attempt to establish a DGRC?
Truth and reconciliation.
Is that a question?
DGRC.
To address the issues of the parties having committed atrocities or having, yeah, that's the TGRC, Truth and Justice Commission or whatever it is. Yes, there was. But the consideration at this stage wasn't about looking back, but we were looking forward. And if we look back, you would entrench immediately the combatants to say, no, okay, if that's the case, if you are going to investigate me, then the best way to do it is to continue fighting. Is that the achievement we wanted to achieve? No. We wanted to achieve a peace. And after peace, we will deal with that issue individually. Because if there was any atrocities committed, it would be individuals who would have committed these atrocities, and therefore they will be dealt with whether by international community or by the countries that themselves The second question that I'm required to answer is, what is the cause of war in, I believe, in Sudan, if it is not oil and if it is not religion? In my interaction with the Sudanese, I came to the conclusion that it wasn't oil, neither was it religion. These two are baggages of war. There was no oil in 1955 when the Anyanya went into the bush. It wasn't the question of religion at that time, because the agreement, the 1972 agreement, had not been thrown out of the window by Emory. So there must be something else. So on that we dug and found out that very simply, and I think I have referred to this, Dr. Lualdeng has referred to this, it is the question of recognition. Just if you are not recognized, if we bought this house, bought this room, 3 of us, and you take it yourself alone and claim that this is my house, and I know I put in my investment into this building, I am ready to fight with you. And that is the cause of the problem of Sudan. People who live within a geographical area and they do not have a right. It is simply called marginalization. So if you are marginalized, then you do not have anything else but to resort to arms. So it isn't the question of oil. And if oil is finished today, you think the war will not be fought if there is marginalization? Why is there a war in the South today? Is it about oil? No. Is it about religion? No. It's about people not being recognized, people being pushed aside. CPA provisions, 3 provisions left out. They were not left out. They were too difficult to implement. We did it. It was done. The party signed on it. I wish I had come with the CPAs. You can see if they signed on it. They were witnesses by international community. All these were there. The issue of the border, the issue of ABA, the issue of popular consultation. And I think, again, with regard to the popular consultation, let's make no mistakes about it. Kordofan and Blue Nile are part of the North. I think we are making mistakes. I think the South is not an expansionist, but they joined the war of the South because they also felt they were marginalized. So even the war in Darfur is a feeling, is a perception that they are being marginalized. It is not because they have oil there. Thank you.
Thank you, General Simbeo. Ambassador Rabi, if you would address 2 questions. One, with regards to the current state of relations between China and Sudan. And secondly, this rather poignant question about whether it is logical for another country to disarm a rebellion within the territory of Sudan, specifically with regards to the SPLM North.
With regard to the relationship between Sudan and China, I don't know what the question really is, but if we want to know about this relationship, the relationship happened for a very simple reason. You know, Sudan was faced with the question of economic boycott by America and was followed by other European countries. And for a country like Sudan to develop its resources and so on, it needs an economic power equal to these powers, and then they can have, they join hands and try to develop the country. So Sudan turned east. They started with Malaysia and then with China and other countries. China responded, and they came to Sudan, and they started the oil, and now Chinese are present both in Sudan and in southern Sudan, and also was involved in a lot of infrastructure inside Sudan and a lot of economic activity. And China really managed to change things in Sudan in the last 20 years to help the country maintain a very high level of economic development. And if not for the last war and the stoppage of oil, the country has maintained an 8% rate of growth, which is very, very, very high. And this is due to a large extent because of the investment of China in Sudan. With regard to the disarmament?
Correct.
Yeah, so the question was the group or the rebels in South Kordofan and in Blue Nile, they were part and parcel of the whole SPLA. And they were called the 9th and the 10th battalion or division or whatever. And one of the things that usually came in the different agreements that were done after the separation was that both the North, that Sudan, and Southern Sudan should stop supporting armed groups in their respective countries. And then that's the reason why the Sudan required that the relationship between the armed groups in southern Kordofan and should stop. No support, nothing between the two. And actually in the CPA there is a stipulation for this, that the groups in the north, which are the southern Kordofan and the Blue Nile, should go into a process of disarmament, and so that people, since the problem is solved, they should continue with the political problem, but at the same time, they don't need to keep big contingents of individuals as soldiers. And this is a program in Sudan now, administered and supported by the United Nations, that not only in southern Kordofan, but the whole of Sudan, and the south, and South Sudan also, that they try to get rid of the many people who were involved in the war and let them go into civilian life. So this was stipulated in the CBA. Of course, the reaction or the answer from the South was that, how could you ask us to disarm people who are not in the South? These people are in the North. But there is this relationship. I mean, until now, the South did not say that we don't have a relationship with these people. They are not connected to us or anything of that nature until now. So these are some of the outstanding things which I hope will be resolved in the coming future.
Dr. Deng, the final question. Asibi might be one of the first to have read the entire manuscript since it hasn't been released yet to the public. And she asks, what will it take to actualize the envisioned Tamazuj zone?
Well, I had mentioned earlier that the two sides have to realize that you don't choose a neighbor when it comes to a country. So they will be compelled by necessities. The fact that they need to trade, after the September agreement, Khartoum opened the border. 700 trucks crossed from the north to the south. The goods they were carrying, they are not South Sudanese goods. They are bought by South Sudanese, but they are produced in the north. So they have interest. And those goods in those economies among you, they are inferior goods in Egypt and in the Gulf. So the market for those goods, where there will be superior or normal goods, is South Sudan. So there's a market for what the Sudan, which is the North, produces. So the Tamazic and Dr. Riek Machar, who is the Vice President of the government of Republic of South Sudan, is calling it as the belt, tying the two together, because they need to trade. Because northern South Sudan, those are the 5 states, especially Unity, Upper Nile, Warab, Northern Bahr el Ghazal, and Western Bahr el Ghazal. They are too far from East Africa market. So this Tamazic, when Dr. John was he put it within the concept of, where I refer to the political morality of Dr. John, where he say, we say what we practice, and we practice what we say. So it was within this, and he said, look, the Tamazic is going to compel us to behave respectfully towards each other. If I can also help with the general question of the causes of why no religion and there's no oil, what is the cause? And we have said recognition, but it's more than, maybe the best way is to say injustice. So the moment people feel that injustice, whether even in the South, people will be fighting because they will see the injustice. And so it becomes marginalization because of the injustice. Why do you marginalize? You are not able to provide justice. And among the things Dr. John used to say, he used to warn us. He said, look, injustice is not only Khartoum. Let us be very careful. When Juba will also begin to do injustice, we are going to have also rebellions in our hands. Thank you.
General Simbeo, Ambassador Rabi, Dr. Deng, thank you very much for a very insightful evening. Turn to my colleague Sita to share some closing remarks.
First of all, the conversation must continue, don't you think? And we will continue it. But at this particular moment, I want to offer very deep thanks to colleagues at the Carter Center and here at Emory on the faculty who have made this continuing conversation possible. Thanks to all of you for continuing to be part of the conversation and follow the conversation. I know that over the course of this series, I've had an opportunity to meet many of you and know that you care deeply about a bright future for Sudan, the Sudans, the region. So thank you. I want to let you know that the series will continue. We are working with our colleague Itonde to invite Ambassador Susan Page to be part of this series after the first of the year. She provided legal support to the CPA mediation process to General Simbeo, and now she is the first U.S. ambassador to South Sudan. So we look forward to welcoming her after the first of the year. And of course, last but certainly not least, I want to thank our very, very distinguished guests for coming to speak with us this evening. I can tell you that they have come from a great distance, and I can also tell you that in the tradition of the Carter Center, they have been kept very busy while they are here in Atlanta, and I'm truly honored that they made the time to come and share their work with us. I'm going to go out on a limb and say that having the opportunity to meet them and to learn more about not only their work, but their deep commitment to peace, I hope that we can invite them back in the not too distant future for a new series on building on peace in Sudan that will feature the work of the Ebony Center, the Future Studies Center, and perhaps the newly created Center for Creative Ambiguity. Please join me in welcoming our guests.
The preceding program is copyrighted by Emory University.